Hello? Very strange. Okay.
It's BBC Two, 9 p.m, and it's called Louis Theroux and the ultra-Zionists.
Correct, yes. And it's very exciting. I finally made a story that I've been trying to make for 10 years, which is a look at these extreme religious settlers who've moved out into heavily Arab and Palestinian areas of the West Bank to live this war-torn existence because the Bible told them to do it.
And that's the claim they make, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they constantly reference the Bible. So much to say about it. It's a terrific programme. It's such a sensitive subject as well, and you're of course very aware of that going into it.
Yes, and actually, and for good reason, because there's so much hinging on it. I mean, for one thing, I would hate for it to be construed as a film that's critical of Israel in the abstract, or indeed the Jewish people. One of the most sort of over the centuries, one of the most defamed and hounded peoples on earth. So there are these huge sensitivities. And this is a look at a very it's what I call a fringe of a fringe. It's not just the settlers in the West Bank, it's the extreme edge of the settlers. So I think it's important, I do like to emphasise that and get that across. Yeah. It's not mainstream Israelis by any means, it's the absolute hardcore.
And we'll put some clips in a moment. Apparently we were off air for a few seconds at the start of the interview because you took your headphones off. Did you sense that we weren't really broadcasting for a moment?
I did, yeah. Well, I couldn't hear you in my headphones, and I was starting to think about it, and that was freaking me out.
Well, I'm sorry about that. No, but I think we're going to go back to John Line as well. He's in Cairo. John, I was asking you about what the new Prime Minister in Egypt has been saying today and been saying about some of the violence yesterday.
Well, yes, a rather mixed message from him. He apologised without admitting responsibility for it. And I think, as I was saying, I think people widely think the people shooting at the demonstrators last night were, bluntly, in the pay of the government, or at least pay of some section of the government, because ordinary Egyptian citizens don't own serious weaponry as they were using last night. So the Prime Minister, apologised, but he didn't admit that it was the government's fault that this happened. He did, in a kind of way, pledge it wouldn't happen again. And really very unclear whether he meant that words had been said behind the scenes. Certainly the pro-government supporters, stroke thugs, are still there. The confrontation is still continuing. So if they are in the pay of the government, they certainly haven't been called off yet. I think the bigger picture we've seen today really is we're finally twigging. President Mubarak is not going to resign. He's not going to give up, and he's going to use every tool at his disposal to stay in office. So if he is to leave power, it will have to be either through his senior military mounting effectively a coup, and it's not clear they're willing to do that yet, or, frankly, we're going to go into something even more bloody, like some kind of civil war.
Right. What in terms of what's happening today, you're in Cairo, what are you hearing in terms of the rest of the country? Is there much violence anywhere else in Egypt today?
I couldn't say, to be honest, the rest of the country. Certainly these, again, quotes, pro-government demonstrators appeared around the country yesterday. So if this is a government tactic, one would guess they would appear in places like Alexandria and Suez and the other big cities where there have been huge anti-government protests.
In the last hour, the US have said that there's a concerted campaign to intimidate international journalists covering the protest. John, is that something that you have witnessed?
There was a bit of it yesterday when the, quotes, government supporters came out. They were a bit aggressive towards us. I've heard that some other satellite dishes and some other television equipment has been destroyed today. Nothing on the BBC, fortunately, yet. The problem for the government here is that they are still nominally an ally of the West. And of course, when I was in Iran, I got kicked out, and the Iranian government could just launch its tirades against the Western press and the BBC in particular. It's a bit more awkward for President Mubarak's government. In theory, he's still an American ally, so he can hardly launch into the Western coverage. Of course, he's attacked Al Jazeera, that favourite butt of a Middle Eastern tyrant, and kicked them out, the Satellite channel out of Doha. So I guess if they are angry with the Western press, they're going to have to do it with a bit more of their thuggery rather than with open criticism.
OK, John, thank you very much for that. There's our correspondent, John Line. Let's go back to Louis Theroux. What a complex and tense and difficult situation that is. I think, Louis, because of the